What happens when a royal family tries to move on from scandal, only to find itself facing a new one? That's the question swirling around Buckingham Palace right now, and according to one royal commentator, King Charles may be facing a decision he can no longer avoid. Should he cut ties with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in the same decisive way he distanced the monarchy from Prince Andrew? Let's talk about why this debate has suddenly heated up again. At the end of January, the British royal family was dragged back into controversy after a massive new release of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. Millions of pages were made public by the US Department of Justice, and once again, the shadow of Prince Andrew's past associations resurfaced. Andrew, who had already been stripped of his titles and royal duties years ago, suddenly became the center of attention again. For the palace, it was another painful reminder of how damaging reputational crises can be for the monarchy. When Andrew was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, King Charles responded by saying something very simple but very telling. He said the law must take its course. That statement was widely interpreted as a clear sign that Andrew no longer had protection from the institution. But now, some royal observers believe another problem is brewing. And in their view, it involves Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Royal commentator Kinsey Schofield recently argued that the Sussexes are creating a different kind of challenge for King Charles. Not a legal scandal like Andrew's, but something that could still undermine the monarchy's authority. The trigger for this latest round of criticism was Harry and Meghan's recent trip to Jordan. The couple spent 2 days in the Middle East highlighting humanitarian efforts supporting Syrians and Palestinians. On the surface, that sounds like a positive initiative. Humanitarian work is something the royal family has historically supported. But here's where the controversy comes in. Harry and Meghan stepped down as working royals in 2020. They made it very clear that they wanted financial and personal independence from the institution. And Queen Elizabeth II made an equally clear decision at the time. There would be no half-in, half-out arrangement. In other words, you are either a working royal representing the crown, or you are not. According to Schofield, what we are seeing now looks suspiciously like that half-in, half-out model returning through the back door. Harry and Meghan are no longer official representatives of the British monarchy, yet their public appearances sometimes resemble diplomatic or royal engagements. And that raises an awkward question. If they're not representing the crown, who exactly are they representing? Schofield argues that the Sussexes still benefit from the global relevance that comes from their royal identity. The titles, the attention, the prestige. All of it was built by the institution they stepped away from. Yet they now operate independently, creating what she describes as a kind of freelance royal brand. From a constitutional perspective, that's where things get complicated. Because when someone appears on the world stage with royal titles but without royal accountability, the line between personal branding and official representation starts to blur. And the monarchy, by its very nature, depends on clarity. Schofield believes the palace should have learned a lesson from the Andrew crisis. In her view, the royal family should have adopted a zero-tolerance approach to anything that could confuse the public about who officially represents the crown. Instead, she says we may be seeing a similar pattern unfold again. During the discussion, Talk TV presenter Peter Cardwell raised the obvious question. If the monarchy truly sees this as a problem, what could actually be done about it? Schofield's answer was blunt. She suggested that if the British government ultimately moves to remove Prince Andrew from the line of succession, then Prince Harry's position should also be reconsidered. And she went even further. In her view, Harry and Meghan's titles should potentially be removed altogether. Now, it's important to emphasize something here. Harry and Meghan have not been accused of anything remotely comparable to the serious allegations linked to Prince Andrew. The situations are not the same in terms of legal severity. But Schofield's argument is about reputation and association. She pointed to the fact that Tyler Perry, who is the godfather of Harry and Meghan's daughter Lilibet, has recently faced civil court claims involving allegations of sexual assault and harassment. Again, these are civil allegations and not criminal convictions, but Schofield argues that high-profile public figures, especially those connected to royal branding, must be extremely cautious about who they align themselves with. For the monarchy, perception can be just as powerful as reality. Schofield also claims that Prince Harry currently has little to no contact with his family. If that's true, it raises another uncomfortable question. If Harry is not working for the royal family and barely communicating with it, why do public appearances sometimes carry the aura of royal authority? That, she says, is the real problem. Because if the institution wants to protect its credibility, it cannot allow unofficial figures to project the image of official power from outside the system. And this is where the comparison to Andrew becomes symbolic rather than literal. Andrew's downfall was about damaging associations and reputational risk. The palace eventually decided the cost of the monarchy was simply too high. Schofield's warning is that King Charles may eventually face a similar calculation with Harry and Meghan. Not because of criminal allegations, but because of the long-term impact on the monarchy's authority and identity. Her conclusion was stark. If the royal family wants to protect itself, it may need to act before the situation spirals into what she calls an Andrew 2.0 scenario. Now, whether that actually happens is another question entirely. Removing titles or altering the line of succession is politically and legally complicated, and it would likely spark an enormous public debate. But one thing is clear. Nearly 6 years after Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal life, the tension between independence and royal identity still hasn't been fully resolved. And for King Charles, the balancing act between family loyalty and protecting the crown may only be getting harder.